Oh, I'm sorry. Did I break your concentration?
Somewhere between science and superstition.
We have such sights to show you.
Strange Eons. Welcome to Strange Eons Radio. That's Eric Morgan over there.
Hello.
That's Vanessa Williams over there.
Hello.
I'm Kelly Young. Hey guys, it's been a week of the same stuff all over again.
It's been a week. Yes.
Has it been a week? Has it?
I'm getting a little tired of this. I think I've jumped on the bandwagon of open everything up and make masks mandatory.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
Just, I mean, if it's okay for us to wear masks in a grocery store, then let's get this going again. I'm tired of this. I feel like people are going to start revolting at some point, and we'll see pitchforks and torches.
It's just so boring. Like everything's just so boring.
Yeah.
Like I'm not productive. Like I wish I was one of those people who is like super productive in the pandemic and like ideas are flying off out of my head and onto pages. But no, I'm just sitting here. My main project that I've been working on for the last couple of months just stopped like this week. So so I'm just now starting to get a little bit of free time. And on the 26th in yesterday, a few days from now, Overtime works on this podcast situation. I'm going to be starting a new project, but it's not super intensive. So this is the first time I've had any downtime, and I've been working like weekends, late nights, because I was a part of creating something like 20 trailers for an Amazon game that just got announced called Crucible. So it was a big project.
Wow.
Nice.
That's cool.
The way this podcast works, Vanessa, is this episode will post in like 4 days. So we'll have another full episode before you start working on something on the 26th.
Fantastic. Oh, I should be done with it by then.
Wow.
No, I'll have another like week with it, I think, by the time this has been posted. So, I mean, I'm heavily in the middle of this, and darn, this is a fun project. I'm so excited for you guys to see it when it's done, because it's looking good.
Wow. You guys, I have spoken to you privately both about this, but now I'm going to make it public. You're both fired. No,
I need this.
I started watching Hollywood on Netflix. I didn't just start watching it. I binge watched it. This show, if you're not familiar, is set just after World War II in Hollywood. And it took me a while to figure this out, but it's a very alternate reality version of Hollywood where gays and blacks are a little more accepted than they would have been then. Probably more accepted than they are now, to be honest. Boy, this show is so much fun. It's the production values are crazy. It's super inspiring. It should be just called gay with a big exclamation point behind it. But it's so much fun. Dylan McDermott is 60 years old, and they had to put gray in his hair to make him even resemble 60 years old in this. He's so good looking, and I just fallen all in love with him all over again. So if you're into filmmaking, if you're into old Hollywood, this is the show for you. It's a blast. Also created by Ryan Murphy, who did American Horror Story, and didn't he do Glee also?
Yeah.
Oh,
I don't know. I mean, he's very out, and I feel like his whole thing is, I'm going to make sure, eventually that my entire next series is going to be all gay men, all gay writers, all gay everything, and he's just kind of like moving his thing through, and you're kind of, I mean, if you're one way or the other, you're either going to love it or you're going to hate it, I guess.
That's crazy. It seems like he's got a good sense of writing that line between fun and like terrifying, because even Glee has some really dark moments in it.
Yeah, and this does too. I mean, he tackles head on, the racism and the homophobia and all of that stuff. It's it's such a neat way to kind of get this message out there, and I just fucking fell in love with it. Eric knows because I was just texting him regularly going, oh my God, episode 5, I'm weeping.
Yes, I need to get watching this one.
Have you finished it now?
Yeah, and I loved it.
Oh, that's awesome. We'll definitely have to check it out. Did I tell you guys I watched Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood?
Oh, what'd you think? Is that the Tom Hanks one? Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Tom Hanks. It's really interesting because like when I first saw them advertising it with Tom Hanks as Mr. Rogers, I was like, this is going to be like uncanny valley weird, like watching him fake this like Fred Rogers life for 2 hours sounds awful, but it's not at all about that. It's about a super cynical guy who only views the world through this lens of like everyone and everything is terrible. And he goes to do like a piece. He's a writer. He goes to do a piece on Mr. Rogers, and like, there's just not, the guy's just really good. He's just a good human being, and he helps him turn his life around. So it's like really more about the dude. It was neat. I don't think I'd watch it again. Like, I don't think that it was like in my top 10 of the year or anything, but it was a surprise to me.
Eric, did you see this one?
I haven't seen that one, but I was going to say, did you see the documentary?
I did not. I really wanted to.
It's really good. It's very good. And yeah, he does kind of seem to be the rare, truly good person, because I figure if he'd done something awful, they would have come out now, because he's been so heavily in the news and all the documentaries, and somebody always wants to pop up and say, he wasn't so good.
Yeah.
But I avoided this movie just because I was angry, because I felt like they were cashing in on the brilliance of that documentary.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. I wonder if it was one of those weird things where like two projects that had a similar nature came about at around the same time, because it's so, I mean, it's excitingly, I don't know, maybe it is because the documentary came out, but it's so much more based on this article that this guy wrote in the 90s. And it's way more about that article than anything else, because it is based on a true story.
Right.
Oh, yeah, I avoided it for the same reason.
It's got a lot of weird surrealism in it. I will say that. There's like a lot of, this guy keeps waking up or dreaming that he's in an episode of Mr. Rogers, and Mr. Rogers has like the little puppets like talking at him like, are you mad? Are you sad? And he's like, and it's just like his psyche and like him in an episode. And Mr. Rogers will be like, this is my friend, blah, 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 and like show a picture of him. And it's really odd, but like, I think it works to bridge that place between childhood and adulthood. So
I kind of watched one that goes right along that theme in a way. Scoob.
Oh, no.
With an exclamation point.
No. How was it?
A lot of fun, actually.
Really?
Yeah, I'm a okay Scooby fan. I like Scooby. I watched it. I wasn't my wife apparently is a bigger fan than I thought. But it's not a murder machine mystery, really, at all. You know, it's a movie, so they've got to have some drama. So it breaks up the Scoob gang when an investor comes in and tells them that these two guys are the most useless parts of your group.
Oh.
So Shaggy and Scooby go off and find Blue.
Is it the Blue Falcon?
Yeah, the Blue Falcon is a prominent part of it. And there's some pretty funny stuff with that. That's a well-executed character, and the people around him. Dick Dastardly is the villain. And the writers had some fun with that name, actually. It was fun. I mean, it was just a nice little escapism cartoon for the world we live in right now. But if you're not a Scooby fan, the only disappointment I'd say is I forgot the guy's name. He's a good actor. He was in that Last Man on Earth TV show.
The main guy?
Yeah. He does Shaggy's voice.
Oh. So they don't have Matt Lillard.
Yeah, why didn't they get Matthew Lillard?
I don't know. I was a little disappointed they didn't have him doing the voice. Other than that, it's pretty good. And little puppy Scooby, it's adorable. And so.
Interesting. I'm just not a fan of Scooby-Doo at all. So,
I would not recommend
it. And I hate mysteries. Like mysteries to me are like Kelly's like House Invasion. There's just something that
They give
They
you
terrify you?
Oh, is that why you don't
Give
like
you
them?
anxiety.
It stresses me out how not fun they are and how I have to sit there and keep watching them.
Well, I don't think anyone would ever really argue that any episode of Scooby-Doo was an actual mystery. I think we knew exactly who the bad guy was as soon as the person who wanted to buy up the land was introduced.
Yeah.
I think it's the slapstick nature of it. Like, I'm not a fan of like physical humor, so it was never my thing. But I had plenty of friends who were obsessed and like had all the like Scooby-Doo like stuffed animals and like bed sheets and all that stuff.
The more recent incarnation from the early 2000s was really actually very good.
With Sarah Michelle Gellar.
That was a blast, yeah.
The cartoon.
No,
Okay.
I thought she did the voice.
She might do the voice too, but I want to make sure that I'm actually talking about the cartoon. They screened a couple episodes of them at the Lovecraft Festival.
Yeah.
They're so Lovecraftian and it's really, really well done. And
I have definitely not seen those.
Yeah, it's very different from the original, but
I think
it still feels like the original.
Yeah, I think it's 2 seasons, and I watched all 2 seasons.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I thought it was hilarious.
Yeah.
The only thing that being said, the only thing that would probably make me watch this Scoob was I saw that Blue Falcon was on the poster, and I was like, "What? Okay."
Yeah, he's prominent too. So is Mutt, Dino Mutt.
So is Blue Falcon a character from Scooby-Doo, like from the original series at all?
No, but he was a Hanna-Barbera character, and they all kind of floated in the same Power Hour or whatever shows they were on, stuff like that.
Sure. Okay. Cool.
Speaking of animation, then, I don't know that Eric's into it. I don't know, Vanessa, are you a Rick and Morty fan?
I have not seen a lot of it, but I don't dislike it.
Well, the second half of the new season has started up, so I believe this is season 6.
Sounds right.
But it's as funny and disgusting as they all are. Very insightful on the human condition, and very nihilistic at the end of every episode when you realize that poor Rick is just never going to become a good human being.
No. I also think it's one of the great misinterpreted cartoons out there by
Why are there so many like anti-women men who are into like
that's where the misinterpretation comes from. There's a lot of, it's like, you got that out of this? Okay, sure.
I didn't realize that was going on. It's very funny since, both of the creators are outspoken women's rights advocates and stuff like that. So I'm surprised to hear that the fans are this way.
Well, it's sort of like what happened with Fight Club.
What did people think about Fight Club?
That it's incel. That's very much about incel ideas and the idea of how it has some strong takes on masculinity, but it's not the takes that a lot of people jump to, where it's we've become wimpy and crappy, so we must regain our manliness by fighting. It's like kind of missing the whole point of the
no kidding.
of the movie and what Polinick has stated several times about it. So
yeah, I definitely noticed that with Rick and Morty. Like, that's part of the reason why I haven't gotten more into it, frankly, is because there are just so many like 4chan lovers watching it and going on about how, like, Pickle Rick is their spirit animal or whatever, buying up all the McDonald's Schwen mustard, whatever sauce. I'm like, this is a world that, I don't know. I mean, like, I've enjoyed everything I've seen of it, but the culture around it's really toxic.
I think that, I think this about all art. You get out of it what you bring to it.
That's fair.
Yep.
That's interesting.
Anyway, that has started up again, and it is on Cartoon Network's Adult Swim. So if you like it and you forgot that it was gone for a while, it's back.
I noticed Riverdale dropped a new season on Netflix, which I have not yet watched, but they just dropped season 4. So.
Oh, wow, 4 seasons.
Very exciting. Yeah.
Well, you got me watching that stupid show again, and so I'm like, oh, really? A new season? Okay. Guess I know what I'm doing tonight.
I know. Spin up the net, Netflix.
So I decided to we decided to torture ourselves last night a little bit, and it wasn't quite as brutal as I thought it was going to be. We watched Contagion.
Oh my God. I just watched that.
It feels almost, with the exception of where shit goes really bad in the movie with the crime and the level of crap in the street, it kind of almost felt like a documentary.
Yeah.
Right?
It's just like, okay, yeah, that seems about right. Okay, cool. So
It's eerily on the money. Like that was I just rewatched it 2 nights ago. So we just watched it at the same time. The whole time I was like, okay, so they're talking about social distancing. They're talking about like Westerners who were like, man, my like wife started wearing a mask and like using hand sanitizer. Isn't that too much? And like the scientists being like, nope, not too much. Good. And just weird little, pinpoints that we have gone through with this thing right up to the bat. I was like, does Soderbergh know the future? The bat is here.
Yeah, that breakdown at the end where they show
how it
ends
started.
with day one, where it's like, wow, that's disturbingly simple.
It was, it was really, I definitely was. I know a lot of people have watched this and become very depressed or like shook by it, but I found it very cathartic. Yeah. I was like, oh yeah, okay, I'm not crazy. This isn't like the things we're experiencing are the things we probably should be experiencing. Cool. Yeah,
it was kind of that when it wasn't.
Well, I had heard, you said, does Soderbergh know the future? I had heard that when this came out and people started watching it again and they were saying, oh my God, we're kind of following this whole project, except for, thank God, the death rate. The doctor who did all the advising on that is the doctor who is working on COVID-19.
Yeah, I did read that, which is fantastic. I mean, like, it feels very accurate. Like all the science, obviously science in films is made up, but it felt as accurate to like how responding and testing and all that stuff would be, and the risks that are associated with it, the way in which it passes from person to person. The scariest scene in that entire film to me was when the boyfriend of the daughter takes the girl out and they're doing snow angels, and then he gets on top of her to kiss her and takes off his mask. I was like, no, put your mask back on. I'm like, oh my God. Was it Matt Damon who's in it? Yeah. And he comes in and like pulls the boy off. I'm like, yeah, you shoot him. Just shoot him. Fine.
He did have a shotgun.
He did.
Yes. But yeah, it was interesting, right down to the prom night thing and everything. It's like, oh, wow.
For me, the depressing part of the movie is just knowing that we've kind of known this kind of thing could happen for 20 years.
Yeah.
And we were still caught unprepared. But we were caught unprepared with SARS and MERS and all of that too. One of the doctors that I listen to on some show is, we're always unprepared when it comes to a virus because there are so many out there and you just never know which one's going to pop and which one's going to just go away on its own even. Oh, this has been fascinating talking, guys. Should we take a break and come back? Oh,
before we go, remember, Flower Mound, Texas.
Oh.
Yes.
Thank you to everyone in Flower Mound, Texas. Thank you to all you rich bastards over there that are listening to our show.
Yeah, we're so excited. We want to know more about you.
Sounds like a lovely place. I mean, when I started looking up the Wikipedia, like looking at the mean salary of everybody there, I'm like, geez, these guys are high on the hog.
They can afford to give us some 5-star reviews.
That's right.
There you go. Yeah, going down. We're mentioning this because for some reason last week, #1 listening area by like 13% of our listeners came from Flower Mound, Texas. Thank you.
If you live in Flower Mound, we like you.
Hey, and since it's only a percentage, that could be 13 people listening to us.
That's right.
We have no idea how many listeners are actually there. All right, now can we take a break?
Sure.
Okay. We'll be right back after these messages.
Someone's come for a nutritious breakfast.
What?
Hello, my name is Boo. Let me finish. Booberry. My ghostly good blueberry-flavored cereal, Booberry, is part of this complete breakfast.
Who do you, Blueberry? Frankenberry's got strawberry-flavored marshmallows.
Count Chocula's got chocolate marshmallows.
But I've got blueberry-flavored marshmallows.
Frankenberry.
Count Chocula.
And Booberry.
We are back. Eric, this time your genre pick was basements.
Yes.
Was there something that led you to this choice?
Not really.
Okay.
It's just, there's something random and weird and see where it leads.
Are you guys like me? Because I have a backlog of like ideas that I'm going to throw out, you know? So do you guys, so was this something like basement is right under pizza?
I have some, and sometimes I pull from it. This one, I was just random, like, let's just try this.
Sometimes I'll also watch a really cool movie and I'll be like, I want to talk about this. So what can I sneak in to make this my pick?
Yes.
Oh, I love that so much. Yeah, I've just been using it as a way to like propel forward films I want to watch. Or if I just am like, this idea is so crazy, I'm just going to torture them with it. Like pizza.
Well, hopefully this one will be as fun as the pizza episode. Eric.
Well, probably not.
Oh, all right.
Damn it. So I would start with a quick mention of one I didn't pick just because it sounded so good and I was so disappointed. Tom Holland had his first film since '96 come out 2 years ago called Rock, Paper, Scissors or Rock, Paper, Dead, which has a bunch of stuff in a basement. And it's
Tom Holland, the director of Fright Night.
Fright Night and Child's Play. It's starring Michael Madsen and Tatum O'Neal. I was like, oh, this looks good. And it's just not. It starts off fine, but Michael Madsen is like a cartoon it's almost, I almost feel like, is he trying to go Nick Cage, but isn't quite going far enough? And like the scene where the killer gets insane asylum instead of jail. Yeah, I'm like, I'll be there when you get out, the day you get out. It's like, no, really? Come on. So unfortunately, I was really excited to see Tom Holland back, and now not as much. So hopefully he'll do another one here soon.
Boy, that's a bummer.
Yeah. On a more fun note, the film I did end up picking was one I actually did end up owning, Beast in the Cellar.
Terror stalks the countryside and holds the community in a grip of fear.
Well, I've never seen anything like this before. Never.
Neither have I, Superintendent.
Human, animal, or animal?
Joyce, he's gone, he's gone!
What are the sinister secrets of the cellar?
Oh, my God. Did they get anyone? Catch anyone?
No, but someone saw the thing getting away.
Thing?
It was a girl, saw it. She thought it was an animal of some kind, but she couldn't really tell.
Darkness cloaked the mystery of the shuddering nightmare of the beast in the cellar.
It's all right, Joyce. I've done it. I've buried him. And who have you been burying in the middle of the night? He can see us. He can see in the dark. Ellie, get to the telephone. I can't.
The Beast in the Cellar brings to the screen the chilling performances of two great ladies, Beryl Reid and Flora Robeson.
I've got to tell them now, Joyce. You do understand, don't you? I've got to. If you think it's best, Ellie.
There you see the Beast in the Cellar and uncover its gruesome secrets.
from 1971, a Severin release. So another one of these that I picked up at Crypticon. The Rotten Tomatoes rating on this is right up there with the lowest one I've ever done. The reviews, the critics have it at 17, and the audience has it at 15.
Whoa.
Wow.
So
Whoa. Somebody made somebody mad. They like sent people to give it a bad review. I don't know how else you get it that low.
It was directed by James Kelly, who hasn't done much else. He did What the Pepper Saw. So I was like, okay, sure. He was mainly a writer. He wrote a lot of British TV from the 60s. Not, nothing I necessarily heard of, but it's British TV from the 60s. I'm not real up on that. But no Doctor Who was a little surprising.
I thought everybody did Doctor Who. I thought that was like part of becoming boot camp for
what I thought.
filmmakers.
It's British. You got to do that. Starring Byrell Reed, who was in Yellowbeard, Doctor Who, and Dr. Five's Rise Again, The Benny Hill Show, and the wonderfully titled No Sex Please, We're British.
Beautiful. That I want to see.
And Flora Robson, who was in the most recent Clash of the Titans as one of the witches. Those magnificent men and their flying machine, or How I Flew from London to Paris in 24 hours and 11 minutes. Now, that's a title.
That is a hell of a title.
And The Seahawk, the swashbuckling film. And let's see, John Hamill, who is also in Doctor Who and Space 1999. And the final one I've got here is Vernon Dobchief with 364 credits.
Wow, that's what you call a working actor.
No kidding. Including Fiddler on the Roof, Indiana Jones' Last Crusade, and The Day of the Jackal, among obviously many, many more. So the basic storyline starts off with there's soldiers in an English town, and one of them gets jumped in the middle of the night and brutally murdered. So the next morning, as the detectives on the moors looking around trying to figure out why he got destroyed, they come to the conclusion, looks like he was killed by a leopard. Like, interesting animal, which was the detective's reaction. The other thing is like, a leopard in Britain?
Also, how do you get that specific?
Yeah, that's what I thought too.
It's just like claws, right?
Maybe a big cat might have been another option,
right.
But a leopard. He spotted, the body was spotted. I don't know. It starts off with these, not to sound too rude to the British military, with these adorable little British tanks almost. Where it looks like an armored vehicle. It's got a gun like right up here, but it's got the guy's face who's driving. It's just sitting in the middle, and he's like,
It's like a one-person tank.
Yeah, maybe two. Probably, I think there's maybe somebody in the back as well, but no more. And it. I mean, if it was driving me down, I wouldn't think it was cute. But on film, it's kind of adorable. So. But then basically the setting up that there's a lot of soldiers in the area. The number one problem this movie has in its reviews, and if you go with it, you'll enjoy it. If it bothers you, you're not going to like the film. The two lead actresses, the lead ladies, banter back and forth a lot in this movie. And to me, it felt like a really fun, not as good, but a really fun Arsenic and Old Lace. Where you had two old ladies, and they're really kind of up to something more. And they know what's going on far more than they're letting on. And they're both very good performances. And I'm guessing if you go to a 1971 horror film that looks like this cover looks, you might be really surprised at how talky the movie is. But I liked it. I thought they were really fun to listen to, and they're really interesting, and they're kind of sweet and charming at first, even though you felt something's definitely up with these ladies. But the movie goes on and other people start getting killed. The kills are actually relatively violent. They're not in-your-face violent. This is often cited as a British giallo, which I think is a pretty good description. Like, so the violence is there and it's visceral and there's blood flying everywhere, but it's like super close-ups most of the time. It's not, you're not languishing in the violence. It's more like it's here, it hits, it's brutal, and it's done. So that, I think that works well. And as the movie progresses, one of the women injures herself and the nurse shows up, which is like, again, kind of feeling giallo-like, because the nurse randomly shows up at what feels like midnight. Like, I'm here, and she wanders through the home because nobody answered. They live in a giant mansion, of course. As she's doing this, you get a true insight into that the ladies are definitely up to something more. When the nurse stumbles on one of the other lady who's healthy burying something. They've got a buddy soldier shows up throughout there to kind of check on the old ladies and make sure they're doing all right, because he's the good soldier. And he, of course, shows up when the young nurse arrives because he's got to hit on her. And then they go look for cigarettes. And if you haven't watched an older British movie, cigarettes have a very interesting name. I'll just set that out there. Either you know it or you don't. So he goes and buys a pack of those. The story then starts to reveal the abusive father who was a soldier, and he came back from the war not the right person. They use the which I think is a wonderful term for post-traumatic stress syndrome, is shell-shocked.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they talk how they didn't know what that was at that time, and they thought, well, they knew what it was, but they didn't fully understand what it meant. And he gets abusive. They have a son, and for some reason he hates the son, just almost violently. As that is revealed a little bit, it goes to, hi, how you doing, Kat? Kat's visiting.
Hello, Kat.
The son's name is Stephen. Stephen went away to school after father died. They start telling, okay, here's go. I'm going to drop my spoiler alert warning at this point, because this is where they start to reveal what's really going on. The police have shown up and they've got dogs on the hunt, and they're trying to find some of the missing soldiers. And as this is going on, the older sister is upstairs dying in bed, and the younger sister starts to tell the story of what happened. And this is where it really felt like a play, which I was already in for, and I was fully accepting the way this ended. But it basically ends with her telling the story of how when Stephen came back from school, he wanted to join the military. And the two sisters were so terrified that he was going to join the military and turn into their father, they bricked him up in the cellar.
Oh my God.
So they left a little hole where they fed him and gave him water.
How very Edgar Allan Poe.
Yeah, it's like, well, that's unpleasant.
Oh my God.
Bird. Hello, bird.
Can you guys hear that?
Oh, yes.
You can? Oh my gosh.
Cute. So her telling the story, she tells it so well, and it's so chilling. Unfortunately, one of the big thoughts I had while watching it is this story would have made a hell of a movie.
Oh. Just that segment.
Yeah. I mean, it's a neat, interesting movie as it was, and I enjoyed watching it. But that would have been a better movie. Just that story, if they'd told the story as the movie. I think it would have been a little better, because it's one of those where you get to the final end and the reveal of the guy, and he attacks the sister, and the cop comes and shoots him, and the guy dies. The real villains in the story are the sisters and what they did to their brother, not the guy who's out killing people.
Wow.
And he's killing the soldiers because they're what he views as his father, or what he wanted to be, and so that was kind of the explanation they gave as to why he went on a killing spree. For me, the movie works because I enjoyed the two sisters' performances, and if you don't like that, this movie's gonna leave you a little cold. That's probably why it has 15.
I was gonna say, why such a low rating then.
Yeah, I the only thing I think is people heard, ooh, British Giallo or horror from the early 70s, and they just thought they're going to get Hirsch and Gordon Lewis or Hammer or something, and it's really none of those. It was a little strange, though, that in the U.S., it was distributed by the Cannon Group.
What year was this?
I'm not sure what the year they distributed it, but the movie came out in 71.
Yeah, I was going to say, was the Cannon Group around in 71?
Yeah, maybe they didn't get it till the 80s.
Yeah, that's one I was thinking. It was produced by a short-lived horror production company in England called Tygon, which produced Witchfinder General, which I haven't seen, and the very good The Blood on Satan's Claw. But so they were kind of the third of there was Hammer, and there was the guys who did starts with an A.
Amicus.
Yeah, that did some really good stuff in the 70s. But they were the little stepchild that did a couple movies and left.
Yeah, so I'll go ahead and jump in. This was an interesting topic, and that it was a little bit. There's so many good options, but then they're all almost a little obvious. So I was like, I'm going to pick out a obscure one. So I had a long list, and there were a lot of rejects in this file. So I don't know if I'll come back around to any of those, but I will say one that popped up on a lot of lists for classic basement films included The House in the Cemetery, which is god awful. There's a little kid actor in that, and it is impossible to get past. I watched that thing, and it was a lot of pain. But the film I did end up on, and it's got its own set of problems, but it's got a really interesting premise, which is it's got two names. It's called Intruders, but it's originally called Shut In.
Today's offering, meatloaf, green beans almondine, and apple cobbler.
I don't know how I'm going to do this without you.
Your brother's already approved these. He's taking care of everything. I just need a signature.
Are you going to keep the place?
Of course. This is my home.
Find her. I need to know where you keep the money. Take her upstairs.
You see our faces? You really think we're just gonna let you go?
You hear that?
Finish! Get out of here! What is this place?
Something tells me we're not your first guests here.
You're not like this.
You have no idea what I'm like.
You haven't left this house in over 10 years?
Hey! What's your game?
You'll understand soon.
So this is a 2015 fairly low budget film. I actually couldn't find any box office or budget numbers anywhere. So I don't know if it was just they buried that information, or if it was a total bomb, or what happened, but definitely pretty hidden. And especially since it's renamed, I'm wondering if they tried to remarket it after it came out. Rotten Tomatoes critics score is 48 and the audience score is 31. So not the best ratings. It's marketed as a drama horror thriller. And the IMDb premise, both useful and not useful. Anna suffers from agoraphobia, so crippling that when a trio of criminals break into her house, she cannot bring herself to flee. But what the intruders don't realize is that agoraphobia is not her only problem. Ooh.
I'm guessing whatever her other problem is in the basement.
Well, it's partly.
Okay.
Partly. So just a little bit about this film. The cast and crew, directed by Adam Schindler. He mostly did like assistant work for other producers, directors, and writers until 2011, and he wrote this in 2015. So very close, almost landed on me.
Darn.
He circled. If I put my hand out, he might have, but came close. So he had about a 4-year period between having done a ton of like PA work to directing his own film. Currently, he's directed one short film called Killing Floor. Right before he did this, he did one short film called Killing Floor. So I don't know how he got this movie. And he did 3 segments that are going to be coming out of a series that'll be coming out later this year called 50 States of Fright. Or is that already out?
No, that's the one on QB.
That's what it is. Okay.
Segment he did.
I don't have it written down here. And he wrote Delivery, The Beast Within. So that's like his entire career. So, and then there's 2 writers on this. We've got TJ Simful, who did part of VHS Viral. He did Vicious Circles segment. He also did No Tell Motel, which is just a hilarious title. It sounded pretty interesting to me. And then Crawl to Me. So who knows who this guy is? He's currently doing something called Hellbent and Weep. And then David White, who also has only written 3 films, also including VHS Viral segment Vicious Circles, Intruders, and the upcoming film Weep. So these guys are like, I don't know how they got this film. It had to have been like a favor or something. So I'm getting circled. He's going to attack. No, he's biding his time. So I don't know like how they got this film under their belt, because it seems like it's probably a $10 to $20 million budget film.
Wow.
It seems like it's not super low budget. It's in between. There's a lot of like gags in here. There's a lot of not like VFX, but there is a fair amount of special effects. Like there's a few names that you'd recognize in this. So I feel like this is like a decent budget movie. So I don't know how this happened. They must have just known the right person. It stars somebody who I don't know her super well. Beth Riesgraf. She plays the main character, Anna Rook, who's the agoraphobic woman. She's done a ton of bit roles, but her main thing is she's done 77 episodes of Leverage. So I don't know who this is, but that's like her thing, and that's
Leverage
what you know.
Is a hell of a show.
Is it?
Yeah, I enjoyed Leverage a lot.
She plays Parker, if you know who that is. Yeah. She's blonde. She's beautiful. She's super beautiful. She also plays Billy's mother in Stranger Things. I was trying to write down things I'd actually have any idea who she is. And she'll be in an upcoming show called 68 Whiskey. She, fun fact, was engaged with Jason Lee. They split up, but they have a child together whose name is Pilot Inspector Reese Graff Lee.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mom and Dad. I really appreciate that.
Pilot Inspector, and it's spelled like French. There are a couple of people you might recognize in this, though. So Rory Culkin is the main big name associated with this picture. So obviously still like an indie film. He plays Dan. He's basically a Meals on Wheels guy / I don't know what he does. He shows up with food and makes quips. So for those of you who don't know Rory Culkin, he's the brother of Macaulay Culkin. He's one of 7 of the Culkin clan. He started off by being playing his like brother actors, like younger versions of themselves. So he's like in a photo on Richie Rich of like young Richie. He's in Igby Goes Down as young Igby. So he just plays like younger versions. And then his first real role was You Can Count on Me. And since then he's gone on to be in Signs, Mean Creek, Scream 4, and of course this great picture. And then we've got like kind of the three bad guys in this, which you've got Jack Kesey, who plays JP. He's the boring one. He's like the dangerous leader. He's boring as hell. You would know him from playing the Master in The Strain. Joshua Mickle, who plays Vance, who's kind of like the skateboarder stoner, like, oh no, man, we shouldn't like be here now. Everything's messed up. Let's not kill her. Guys, we're going too far.
Is this another movie you're going to end with? I'm talking about it because I want to make sure people don't watch it.
No. I'm trying really hard now to choose films that are watchable at least. So if I was going to do that, I'd do House in the Cemetery.
Yeah.
That was, anyway. It's rough. But anyway, so you might know him as Jared from Walking Dead, and then Martin Starr, who's probably the biggest name in this film. He plays Scary Perry, who's kind of this like scary, unhinged, like crazy psychopath. Like, yeah, I'm just going to stab her and see what happens. But you know him as either Bethram in Silicon Valley. He plays Mr. Harrington in Spider-Man: Homecoming, the teacher who's like taking them across Europe.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he plays Roman in Party Down, or Bill in Freaks and Geeks was his big first role. So the guy's super recognizable, and he's done a ton of stuff, and he's by far the best actor in this thing. He just runs circles around everybody. So the film, basically we start off on a woman who looks like she's beautiful, but she looks incredibly unhappy. She's taking care of this guy who's like in like a hospital bed that's inside of their home. You're not really sure what the relationship with her and this guy is, like whether he's her dad or her husband. Turns out he's her brother. He's very close to death. She is just kind of a dick to him the whole time. And like, there's a very telling scene in which he somehow manages, even though he's bedbound, manages to get outside and like is sitting on a porch swing at night. And he's like, come join me. I want you to experience the stars. And she's like, how'd you get out here? Well, I'm not helping you get back. Close his door. I was like, man. And then like 2 days later, he dies. So I'm like, good job, lady. Way to be a jerk to this poor dude on his deathbed. He passes away, and there starts to unravel this plot that's a little confusing. So she's supposed to be inheriting like a ton of money, and she just has to sign some paperwork, and this woman keeps showing up to get her to sign this paperwork so she can be unbelievably rich. But she's already unbelievably rich, even though she lives in this slightly like, it's a big house, but it looks a bit run down. So the money thing, I don't know why or how or in what way she has all this money. Rory Culkin shows up to deliver his food to her, and with his quips about, oh, well, today we've got meatloaf, more loaf than meat, if you know what I mean. And she has a little breakdown, and she sits him down and offers him this giant bag of money. And she's like, I don't need it. I don't want it. Just take it. And he's like, I cannot take this money. So he leaves. She's supposed to go to a funeral. And this is when we learn that she can't go outside. This is when we figure out she's agoraphobic, because she puts on her whole garb, like beautiful, like black dress, puts her hair up, can't go outside. And it's obviously her brother who just passed away's funeral. She then gets a series of phone calls from what I thought was her sister, but that doesn't make sense for the rest of the plot. So there's somebody who cares about her deeply, who's calling her and trying to get her to come out. Is like, hey, I'm really excited you're going to come outside. Next voicemail, hey man, like you can do it. I believe in you. Like we're waiting for you here. Next phone call, the funeral's starting, but if you leave now, you might make it. So she fails. She can't go out even for this important thing. In the meantime, 3 dudes show up in a truck it becomes a home invasion film, to break into her house and get all this money that she has. She's not supposed to be there because she's supposed to be at her brother's funeral. And thus begins a game of kind of cat and mouse, where she is running around trying to escape these dudes. These dudes initially are in there trying to fund money, but then it turns into, oh shit, like we've got a witness and we've got to take care of her because she's seen our faces, and they discover she can't get outside. So they're like, oh, haha, we've got you now. You can't even leave. We could just have the door open. You won't even go. And she super does not go. But this is when the twist occurs. She manages to injure one of the three dudes. I guess she kills him. She like stabs him in the neck. She pulls him downstairs. So you just see the two dudes and they're kind of like listening to the sound. It goes thunk, thunk, thunk. And she's pulling this body downstairs and she puts it in this basement. The two guys go downstairs to the basement to try and figure out what's going on. And lo and behold, she presses a button and the stairs go into the wall. And they're trapped in this weird, like all of a sudden it's Saw. It's so crazy. You're like, wait, what? And there's like these rooms with like these things in them, and you're not sure like what she's gonna do to these guys. And her personality like flips a little, and she becomes a little more like, I guess, sinister, evil. Like now you're like, you guys have really fucked up because you're inside my circle of hellscape house thing.
My red room.
My red room. Exactly. So this is when the film, I feel like there's a fork in the road. It could be incredible. You really want it to be like, oh, well, she's actually, her and her brother were playing these horrible like mind games with these people and like torturing them. And they have to like, to get out of this room, you have to cut off your own arm. Like I don't like the Saw films. And I was like, cool, we're about to be in a Saw film. This is crazy. Instead, it's like, she's only kind of in control. Like she has the upper hand. She literally can do anything she wants them, but she's still like almost hiding and running from them at times, even though she has them trapped. So it becomes very odd. From there, we've just got a series of her getting them to go from one room to another, and nothing's really happening to them. They're not really like getting trapped in anything or injured too much. It's very odd. Rory Culkin has showed back up. He came in actually when they were all like bumbling around upstairs and they had tied him up, and she's like, oh, well, you're fucking in on it too. And he's like, hey, you're not this person, like when she locks him in the basement. He's like, you're not this person, you're a good person. She's like, you don't know who I am, and throws him in the basement, and he gets severely injured. His knee's all fucked up. It's like being out of itself. So there's some like really interesting gore moments happening. And this is where I'll go ahead and give a spoiler alert. I'm just going to go ahead and talk about the ending here. So she eventually gets into a situation where she decides to save Rory Culkin's life because he's kind of a good guy. She has given one of the dudes a gun with a single bullet in it to shoot himself. He's not doing it. Instead, he puts it on Rory, and Rory's like, shit. And she's like, fine, whatever, you guys can leave. So she opens up the house and they can go out. They go out, but then the smart, boring one goes back in, and he's like, well, fuck you, bitch. He starts like dumping gasoline around, and she comes out and he like grabs her and he's like, I'm gonna kill you because you killed my brother, who's the first guy she killed. She's just like, well, here's money, just take the money, who cares? And he's like, well, that's not good enough. And her backstory is that the whole room system exists because she was sexually assaulted by her father. She was abused severely by her dad. And when her dad died, the reason why she didn't leave the house is she was really messed up by that. And when her father died, her and her brother have set up this downstairs elaborate basement to put pedophiles in and to torture them and kill them. So the brother who knows this, the boring main guy, he decides to grab her and take her upstairs to rape her in her childhood bedroom as like punishment. It's so out of nowhere. And then like Rory Culkin like stumbles in and he's like, no, you shouldn't do it, friend. And like the guy's like, shut up. And she like shoots him. And like basically the movie's It's very anticlimactic, and that's the problem. Like, the third act of this film is extremely problematic. Rory Culkin, then, it's great actually. The final scene is pretty brilliant. She sits down on the couch. She's not going to leave. She's shut in. She could not do it this whole film, so obviously she's not going to do it now. Rory Culkin's like, okay, well, this was fun. He like steps outside and just closes the door, like, bye. And then we see headlights go across her face as he drives away, and you're like, damn, all right, that guy's fucking out. He's like, I'm done with this whole movie. And she sat there, and then she like gets up, opens the door, goes outside, and burns her house down. And I'm like, why? What was the motivator? So here's the good things about this movie, all right? It has a really cool setup. Like, I really like the initial idea of this woman who she can't leave even though her house is being broken into. I think it's a neat premise because it gives you have so many problems in films where you're like, why don't you just jump out the window? Why don't you just, go past the guy? Why don't you just scream for help? All these things. And there's some really good reasons why she doesn't, because not only can she not leave, but she also isn't going to go call the cops because there's like dead bodies in her house. So there's some really good logic to a point. I love that this house, like, has this weird trap situation where it's got like wings and things that like disappear, and one room leads into another and you just don't know what the thing is. That's really neat. There's also a great moment where when they come in to find her money, that bag filled with like thousands of dollars, the bag of money is on the table in front of them the whole film. That's cool. It's very Hitchcockian. The idea of her switching personalities is super great. And the pain, the like injuries that you see people go through, also good. And best of all, she has really nice hair. That girl's hair, it's just bouncing. It's beautiful. It's in these nice little ring. Oh my God, it's gorgeous hair. So good, whole way through. Never gets messed up. Love it. The bad, and the third act is just such a huge letdown. I found one quote of somebody who reviewed the film where they said, Dennis Harvey, who wrote for Variety, said it's an efficiently engineered suspense film with a solid performances and a tight pace, but the third act is a bit of a letdown, and that's like 100% accurate. You just like, I just wanted so much more, and they had so many more opportunities. And I think it really loses a lot of momentum when the best actor in the film dies. At that point, you're just like, I don't care about anybody else in this movie. And I'm not talking about Rory Culkin. Sorry. Her weaknesses are infuriating to watch when she should have the upper hand and she should just be owning the film, and she's still like skittering around like a mouse. I'm like, I can't, dude, you need to, like, they need this character to just own it. And then the ending is baffling. Makes literally no sense. So it's a hard film because I'd say it's not that you shouldn't see it. It has tons of really fun things in it, but I also wouldn't necessarily recommend it just because it really misuses so much of what it could have done.
I'm confused. Does the lady have a split personality?
No.
Okay. She just gets a little more confident when she gets into the basement. Now you're in my world.
You know what? I don't know. I say that and I actually don't know. To me, it seemed like once they're in the basement, she's like, oh, actually, you don't even know, but this house is my house and I can do these things to you. But maybe she does. And the way that the IMDb premise breaks it down, it sounds like she has some additional disorder, but you never see that really take fruition. And I think if that had been the trigger, that would have made so much more sense, because her going between being a scaredy cat and in charge would have just been so much more interesting if she was going between two different personalities of like, this is this version and this is this version of me.
Right. Okay.
Knowing her from Leverage, she's good in Leverage, but she's in a large group. There's like 6 or 7 people involved in every episode of Leverage. They're like a team of con artists.
The actress was fine. I think it was the direction and the writing, which makes sense because this is a PA. a PA with one short under his thumb, or like one short under his belt. Like, this guy doesn't know what he's doing. Like, the writing team doesn't know what they're doing.
Wow.
So it's just, I mean, it's a cool idea. It just doesn't, man, they needed like 5 more drafts just of the final act, just really pin it down.
All right. Well, I will jump in. I decided to use this topic to watch a movie that I had not seen before, but I have heard a million people talk about, and that is from 1973, Don't Be Afraid of the Dark.
Kim Darby has inherited this house from her grandmother, but the house has some secrets.
What's this?
It's for cleaning out the ashes.
It's been bolted shut.
By me. And that's the way it should stay.
I think we have visitors.
Visitors?
Mice. I thought I saw something in the kitchen. It was something like this. A little ferocious animal grabbed at my dress.
Sally, we want you. We want you. We want you.
Don't be afraid of the dark.
So I imagine both of you have seen this.
You know what? I thought when you first said this, I thought you meant Are You Afraid of the Dark?
Oh, okay.
The Nickelodeon series. So I have not seen Don't Be Afraid of the Dark. I have seen Are You Afraid of the Dark?
Well, this was a 1973 TV movie, and it is available to watch on Warner Archives. They put this out again.
Nice.
And because it's a TV movie, there's no budget or box office information, but the Rotten Tomatoes critics score has it at 67%, and the audience have it at 58%. It was directed by John Newland, who has 61 credits, all TV. Remember, this is 1973, so he's directing a ton of TV shows, and they range from an episode of the original Star Trek to Thriller to Alfred Hitchcock Presents, Wonder Woman, Fantasy Island, Police Woman, and One Step Beyond.
Police Woman.
Yeah, me too. I love that show. It was written by Nigel McCann, who has several episodes of The Waltons under his belt and stuff as recent as Seventh Heaven. So,
wow. Okay.
Stars Kim Darby, who has 85 credits, including Ironside, Love Boat, Streets of San Francisco, but she was probably best known as she was the little girl in the original True Grit movie with John Wayne.
Oh, yeah. Cool.
And it also stars Jim Hutton, who was on a couple of episodes of Love American Style, Father Knows Best, One Day at a Time, and he actually played Ellery Queen in the series Ellery Queen. I've heard so much about this movie, and there was a remake that came out in 2011, which I'll get into a little bit later, but I wasn't sure exactly what to expect. So I'm just going to go through really quickly because I think this is something that most people my age have seen, and I'm not sure how I missed this when it came out. I mean, I would have only been 4 when it came out, but I was only 6 when Jaws came out, so I managed to see that in the theaters. It seems like this is something my mom would have been just fine with me watching.
Oh my God.
So Kim Darby plays Sally, who is a neurotic woman who has inherited a gigantic Victorian mansion. And she and her husband, Alex, decide they're going to renovate it and redecorate it and all this stuff. She finds a locked door, and she busts down the lock and discovers that the house has a very cool, creepy basement down below. In the basement is this beautiful fireplace that has been mysteriously bricked up. Why would anybody do something like this?
Don't unbrick it. Don't unbrick it.
The answer is always, I'm sure they had a good reason. Maybe we'll just leave this alone. But she has the bricks removed and unwittingly unleashes these tiny little demons that have been living in this sub basement of the house. And it doesn't ever show that, but it shows you some really cool perspective shots where they unbrick it and it just drops down a hole. So they're looking down and the camera looks like it's miles below them, looking up at their tiny faces up there. And they're like, wow, no wonder they bricked this up. It's a big, huge hole. And these things these little demons start tormenting her. They're like evil little fairies or trolls. Keep in mind, she has had they don't really tell you what her mental issues are, but she has something. It could just, it's 1973. She could have the vapors. Who knows?
The vapors.
And these little creatures are played by actors in suits. So you're getting a lot of forced perspective shots and a lot of shots where they are running around in sets that have been scaled up, 200 times. So
How little are they?
they look like they're about, 8 inches tall, maybe.
Whoa, okay.
They're
Got
tiny.
it.
Yeah. So Sally, she begins to start seeing these little creatures everywhere, and she's trying to get her husband to believe her, and he doesn't believe a thing. But not only does he not believe, he like aggressively doesn't believe her to the point where he's a huge dick, and you're wondering, why did you end up marrying this guy? Or if you're that guy and you dislike her so much, why did you marry her? It's one of those things that I always have a hard time with when the married couple seem to actively hate each other.
Yeah.
You're kind of like, how did you guys meet and fall in love in the first place? But it was the 70s. Who knows?
Arranged marriage.
Yeah, he does end up being a real dick or feeling like a real dick, even though he's worried about her mental health and everything. He's just a real dick about all of it. Pretty soon people are dying. The lead redecorator falls down the stairs to the basement and he dies, and she can't get anybody to believe her. Her husband's got a big huge party that he's got to have happening there, and she's actually seeing the little demon things running around through the party like in a potted plant and stuff like that. She's trying to take pictures of them, and there's a scene at a dinner table where it's under the table and you can see everybody's feet, and here are these creatures that are trying to fuck with her for some reason. And I'll drop my spoiler warning here, because if you haven't seen this is where it does get kind of cool, and it is kind of the whole point of the movie, I guess. At one point, she is alone in the house in the last act, and she's trying to stop these creatures. They are afraid of light, so she's using like a camera flash to try and scare them away. But they end up getting a rope around her feet, and knocking her over to the point where she's in some kind of state of semi-consciousness. And they've got this rope around her feet, and they begin dragging her through the house, down the basement, boom, 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 down the stairs and everything, and she can't really fight them. Meanwhile, her husband and a friend have broken down the door, which was locked from the inside, to get back into the house. They've started to believe that something is going on. And she is, I was shocked, dragged down into this hole. And that's pretty much the end of the movie. Her husband staring down into this hole going, I think she might have been telling the truth. Wow. The way the film starts is the shot of this house, and you're hearing these creepy whispering voices. Is she going to come? Is somebody going to come? She's going to rescue us and all that stuff. And the way the film ends is with those creepy voices again, but now you can definitely hear that her voice is one of the creepy voices whispering.
Oh.
And so she's been dragged down and become one of these little creatures, I guess, is what we're supposed to believe. It's a pretty creepy ending. And I'll admit this, if I had seen this at a young age, I think that this would have been one of those kinder trauma movies, because the whispering is very creepy and the creatures are pretty creepy. They're people in costumes, but they've got really creepy mask faces and stuff. And this probably would have terrified me as a 5 or 6 year old, like it does. A little bit of trivia on this. I did think this was pretty interesting. The total pre-production, production, and post-production time, including casting, special effects, voiceover, and all the shooting, was done in just over 2 weeks.
Whoa.
This is the quickest made for TV movie ever made from green light to finish.
Does it feel like that? Or is it just super well organized?
It's pretty well organized, but the whole point of it was they were dealing with a writer's strike that had happened just prior to the production. So they were pushing this to get it in the can so that they would actually have material to show. The role of Alex was originally given to George Hamilton, who you might know from such lovely movies as Love at First Bite and Zorro the Gay Blade, and he also played Evel Knievel in the Evel Knievel movie. No, I knew that going into this movie, and so it was a little distracting because I didn't love the actor playing Alex very much, and I kept thinking, George would have delivered that line a lot better. So I liked the movie, but I didn't love it, and I decided, okay, I'm going to watch the remake of this again. Maybe I didn't give that a fair shake, because I remember seeing that movie in the theaters when it came out, and that's a rated R film produced by Guillermo del Toro, and that was a passion project of his. I remember watching it in the theater, not loving it, and I decided to go back and watch it. apparently I was not alone. So in 2010, the remake had Katie Holmes and Guy Pearce in it. It was written by Guillermo del Toro based on this TV movie. It was directed by Troy Nixey, who has done nothing since that movie. Right. So if you've got a Guillermo del Toro produced and written film that he felt enough of you to give you a chance on this and you didn't do anything afterwards. Ouch. Yeah. The critics had that one at 60% and the audience has it at 34%. Oof. So I watched this again. I liked it a lot more than I liked it the first time. And I have to say this, and sorry to everybody, I liked it a lot more than the TV movie. It's got a lot of the very same beats. The creatures were way creepier. They're very skinny. I don't know what to call them. They're like rats that can walk on their hind legs and carry weapons and everything, but the faces are very human, kind of like a Brown Jenkins kind of thing going on there. The main protagonist in this one is a child because Del Toro wrote it. And it's still got a really creepy downer ending where Katie Holmes, who basically is playing the same Kim Darby character, it's just they've shifted the attention away from her and put it on the child. I gotta say, I enjoyed it a lot more than the TV version, but I was glad that I did finally get to see the TV version because everybody has talked about it forever at all of these things, you know. So I don't know. It did have a very cool, creepy basement, and the creatures were fun, and the whispering still is very scary. For some reason, that's a scary thing to, I think, humans in general and horror fans in particular.
Yeah, it actually sounds really interesting to me, and I would definitely check either of those out.
Yeah, well, if you want to watch it, you know, a lot of people, this was just never available. If you were going to watch it, it was a bootleg tape of it that somebody had actually videotaped, you know, very early on off of ABC.
Grandma had it like recording in the background. Somebody's like, oh, what's this?
Yep. Right. So, but now because of the Warner Archives things, which is the same way I watched Bermuda Depths way back then, and or when we
Day of
talked
the
about
Dolphin?
that. No, not Day of the Dolphin.
Already had
Warner Archives will put out movies, and basically they don't print it until you order it. Is the way it works. So you're paying $25 for a very bare bones DVD. This is also, I believe, right now available to watch on Prime. That's my pick, and that's all of the picks. So I think that it becomes Vanessa's turn.
That's right. Oh man,
Yay.
I'm going to go ahead and pick plant-based horror. Horror based on plants. It just has to have a plant featured. Ideally, not a power plant. Not planting things on people.
You mean like a grow in the ground plant?
An organic thing that is a plant.
I'm doing Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
We're not doing Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Probably shouldn't do Attack of the Killer Tomato. I don't know. Like,
Day of the Triffids.
Day of the Triffids is fine. If you want to sit through that movie, go for it. It was a rough read and it was a rough watch. And what's the other one? Little Shop of Horrors. Let's avoid that too.
That sounds fair.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Bless everybody who's seen those movies. So
exactly.
So, watching a movie and there's a plant in the background. I'm good. All right.
That's how movie features a plant. The plant's got to be a part of the plot in some way. It doesn't have to be a movie literally about plants, but the plant has to be a key pivotal thing to the film.
Cool. I like it. I can work with this.
Kind of like Basements, but with plants. And less basements.
Could be. Depends. Some people grow things in the basement.
It's true. I'm not gonna say you can't use a plant basement combo.
All right, you guys, enough of this bullshit. Thanks to everybody for listening, all of the kind words, the rating, the reviewing, the sharing. We really appreciate that, especially at Flower Mound, Texas. And
I want to go when this is all over. I want to go.
You mentioned reviewing again. Let's get some reviews in again, folks. I want some new 5-star challenges of movies to watch and talk about. So go rate us, give us 5 stars, and probably me who end up watching a movie that you challenge us to watch. And we need to get more ratings on, wherever you want to put them now. We used to just say iTunes, and that's still the gold standard, so we'd prefer that. But if you want to put it on Spotify, that'd be great. Or Google, was it Google Play? I think is what it's called for Google. Any place, every place. Or if you put it in one iTunes and you really like us, feel free to find the other ones. If you gave us a 5 on iTunes and gave me a movie, you give us a 5 on Spotify or however their rankings work, you can give a second film.
Beautiful. I love it. He's got time right now. Go for it, guys.
I will make time for our reviewers that love us enough to give us 5 stars. No
I have never felt slimier after hearing that pitch for begging for reviews. But
I'm glad it's him and not me.
That's the world we live in.
I will say this, you guys, the reviews help so much because the more reviews you have, the more eyes you get on the show, and we have 0 advertising budget. So this is how we get in front of other eyes. Or ears, as it were. So, okay, thanks so much. We will be back next week with plant-based horror. In between that, we will have our usual short Aeons, which give you little suggestions of things you can binge watch or whatever streaming on various streaming platforms right now. Okay, everybody, get out of here. See ya.
Bye.
Our podcast is recorded at Eric's house, and Vanessa's house, and Kelly's house, and is engineered and edited by Eric Morgret. Our theme music is Strange Aeons Part 1 by the band Nightshade, and is used with permission. Find Strange Aeons Radio on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and wherever fine podcasts are found.